So, how about another controversial question of, did God make people gay, or make gay people? Now, let's answer this first off. Did God make gay people? Yes, he made all people. So whether you are gay or straight, God is still the primary creative instigator for, or initiator for your existence. He, all the same verses that apply to heteros, Psalm 139, and they're like that. All those apply to you equally. That you were made in God's image. That you were known from before the foundations of the world. All those apply to you. But as far as did God make people gay is the more complicated issue. And coming from a naturalist standpoint, simply the science, the jury essentially is still out on where attraction really comes from. There is the nature versus nurture disagreement, or theories, or kind of hypotheses present, that are people born the way that they are to love the things they want, or are they conditioned at a young age, or like all those different things that people disagree about. We simply don't know enough to know for sure. So anyone that's saying that a person was born this way, they're simply making an assumption. They're not making an empirical statement. There are other things that we also don't know where they come from, such as handedness, left or right-handedness. We simply don't know why it is that some people are born left-handed. We don't. Why is that? It just, some people are. Some people are born ambidextrous. Why is that? We also equally, we simply don't know where that comes from, if that's genetic, or if that is something to do with the structure of their hands, or if it is something to do with the wiring of their brains, or what. Like, we simply don't know. And the same thing is true for attraction and sexuality. Why is it that a person can be any of these different, some people are just, they're not attracted to anything, asexuality. They're not attracted to necessarily anything, or they're not stimulated by. So we simply don't know what is, we don't know, not only do we not know really the pieces on the field, we really, from a scientific or a naturalist standpoint, we don't even know where the board really is. So getting down to it, if a person says, well, this person was born this way, how dare you, simply, you don't know that. And so what's happening is there's an exposure of agenda where the person is really just trying to shut down the conversation, making blanket statements that they can't actually defend in order to shame the person they're in conversation with. So putting that aside, in Romans chapter 1, which I've been on the subject of what the Bible actually says about homosexuality, and there's some myths and rumors flying around that it's primarily supposed to be forbidding like imbalances in age or consent, like man and boy, like pedophilia type stuff, and that's simply not the case. It's like the Bible does forbid pedophilia and things like that elsewhere, but that's not what, like 1 Corinthians 6:9-11, it actually says man bed, not man boy. So like simply, if you have heard that, it's a lie, and if you believe that, you're wrong. But even those things aside, in Romans chapter 1, in verse 24, it says, therefore God gave them up in the lusts of their bodies to impurity, to dishonoring their bodies among themselves, because they exchanged the truth about God for a lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen. For this reason, God gave them up to dishonorable passions, for their women exchanged natural relations for those that are contrary to nature, and men likewise gave up natural relations with women and were consumed with passion for one another. Men committing shameless acts with men and receiving in themselves the due penalty for their error. All right, so there's a lot in there, but what it actually says, so gave them up to in the lusts of their heart, to impurity, gave them up to dishonorable passions, and giving up natural relations, becoming consumed with passion. There's a lot, basically what it's saying is, so even, let's say, you aren't attracted to women. If you're a guy and you're not attracted to women, is that a free pass to just have sex with anything you want that you feel attracted to? And the answer is clearly no, because, for instance, I, as a heterosexual man, am not free to just have sex with anything I'm attracted to. I have just one wife. And if you are not married according to the biblical standard, which is one man and one woman, then you're not free to have sex with anyone at all. So, but what we know biologically, as far as science is concerned, and what we know spiritually, is that sex does something which literally creates an addiction within the person who participates in it. That simply the dopamine and the oxytocin and all these things that are released during sexual activity, it creates an addictive, and you literally, as far as like, you lose your mind in pursuit of it once you have tasted it. Like, it's a drug, and it affects the brain like a drug, so that as you become more and more obsessive about it, the more enslaved you become to it. And that's really what it's describing here, that God, like, listen, that God gave them up in the lusts of their heart. See, we all have attractions, but attraction and lust is not the same thing. That you can be attracted to, like, for instance, I'm attracted to heterosexual females, but I don't lust after them. I have a wife, and I am satisfied in my wife. That the person who is not, that has given themselves over to lust, often is going to be addicted to pornography, and they're going to have extremely unhealthy views of the opposite sex, either toxic relationships towards them, or on the other hand, they're going to have like inferiority or dominance complexes toward them, and all of that is incredibly dangerous. It is a recipe for unhealthy masculinity, unhealthy femininity, unhealthy relationship dynamics. Like, just all of those things stem from that issue. But as it feeds itself, it becomes like the snowball that, as it's tumbling down, it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, it gets more and more momentum. So literally, God gives them over to dishonorable passions. Something that science has shown us very clearly is that pornography has this progressive effect on the human mind. That you start off maybe with like this Victoria's Secret catalog, or the whatever that comes in the mail, you steal out of your mom's mailbox, and then it's watching Slinky Girls and TikTok videos, and then it's Pornhub of whatever, and then it keeps on progressing until eventually you're meeting prostitutes, and then eventually you're like, it just keeps progressing. And simply, I mean, this is something that is heavily documented, that there's like, you build up these tolerances, and so now you have to get harder and more aggressive things in order to satisfy what used to just simply be satisfied by stealing the Victoria's Secret catalog. You're building up a callus, essentially a scar tissue over your ability to sense things and be attracted with literally dishonorable passions. And it becomes aggressively and increasingly more and more unnatural until you begin to see people passionate about animals and children that have become more and more visible on the internet as Tumblr changed its terms of services and terms of agreement so that all of the unhealthy attracted individuals that were attracted to children began to invade Twitter. And so now you begin to see all these people that are these incredibly toxic sexualizations of children have invaded and begin debating, and that have been trying to force themselves into acceptance with the LGBT, which, to their credit, again, I did a video on this a long time ago, but to their credit, they've been resistant. But I guarantee it's only a matter of time before the tide shifts, because simply there's a lot of things that are now included in the LGBT, which, dial it back 5, 10, 20 years ago, they would have absolutely refused admittance. So even though the no maps and things are just, they're knocking gently now, eventually the door will be open to them. And you can disagree with me about that or not, but this is what history shows us. So, getting back to the very root core issue here. Did God make people gay? Simply, if you want to say that God made them that way, you don't have a choice but to admit people who are attracted to children into your group. Or you don't have a choice. If you're saying that people need to be accepted and promoted and encouraged in their sexuality simply because they were born that way, then simply you have no choice but to admit into your collective those who are attracted to animals and children. And the people who are attracted to animals, like furries and things, like, they've made a lot more headway into the LGBT than the children have, but like, it's only a matter of time is what I'm saying. So what we're going to go with, as far as biblical theology is concerned, is that it doesn't matter what you think about how you were made. It doesn't matter what you think about how you were wired in birth, whether you were designed to be attracted to men or if you were designed to be attracted to women. The Christian theological approach to sexuality is that no one is allowed to have sex except men and women in a singular covenant with one another in one flesh, mirroring the gospel. No one is. So if you want to have sex, then there's one way to do that. Otherwise, the only option for you is celibacy. That's it. If you don't like celibacy, get married. And so that is really the cause, the force behind the acceptance of LGBT marriage in society. Is like, all right, fine, we'll get married, but on our terms. No, God created marriage, and thus God is the only one who has the right to design or determine the regulations of what marriage is. And he has designed it. And so you can create this thing over here that you're doing, but that's not marriage. And so it doesn't fit the bill. That if you want to be able to have sexual intercourse, there is only one way to do that and be honoring God. Now, if you don't care about honoring God, then like, why are we even having this discussion? Simply, the whole purpose of this is that there's a beautiful design, and that beautiful design points us to God. That marriage and sexuality, these things point us to the beauty and the worship and the glorification of God, and the relationship of Christ and his church, and the unity and the diversity present in the relationship of the Trinity. It's all supposed to point us towards that. What these other things, these alternatives, are is attempts of human idolatry to say that no, we don't want God, we just want his toys. We don't want to worship God, we just want to mirror and we just want to mimic what God does. And simply, that is why I was like, all right, fine, but you don't like where this road goes.